Story 1. The Baby Ghost. Back in 1993, I was buying my first home. The oldest son of the woman whose house I was buying was acting as the executor, so he was at the closing. My first son, at the time, was 2. I left him with my mother while I went to the closing to sign off on all of the paperwork for the house. After all the paperwork was signed, the man who was the seller said to me that his younger sister still lived there and would be getting all of her things out over the next few days. He told me not to mind her, that she was a little strange, and that years ago she had found her baby upstairs in that house, dead, in a pool of Coca-Cola. I had no idea what he meant, and frankly thought that was strange to say to someone. So my son and I moved in and started our new life. I forgot all about the man and what he said to me until about a year later. It was a Saturday morning. I had always got up early on the weekday mornings. So on Saturday mornings, I would sleep until my son would come and wake me up to make him breakfast, usually around 7 a.m. On this particular Saturday morning, I woke up on my own and found that it was 9 a.m. I was a little upset because I felt I was a bad mother for sleeping so late. I ran out into the hallway and said to my son, who was now about 3.5, "Why didn't you wake me up? Are you hungry?" He answered me, "It's okay, Mommy. I was playing with the shadow baby." Needless to say, I was instantly weirded out, and I remembered what that man had told me a year ago at closing. My son went on to describe that the shadow looked how tall it was and how he wasn't afraid of it at all. He said when I got up, it ran into his bedroom and disappeared into his chest of drawers. So we got over that and even totally forgot about it. It never happened again. In the meantime, I got married and had another child when my first son was about 8 years old. Both my first son and I still had no thoughts of this ghost experience whatsoever. We had totally forgotten it had happened until one Friday evening when my second son, who was now about 3 years old, had a strange experience. My first son and my husband were out at the store. My youngest son and I were getting ready for bed. I was already upstairs in the bathroom. I was calling my youngest son to come brush his teeth. He comes running in full blast, up the steps, past the bathroom, and into my older son's bedroom, laughing and yelling, "Mom, Mom, it's a baby! I'm chasing him! Look! A baby, Mom!" I follow him into my older son's room. My younger son was standing in front of the chest of drawers, pointing to it and saying, "The baby went in there, Mom! The baby went in there!" At that point, the whole memory of what that man told me at the closing, all those years ago, and what my older son had experienced, came rushing back. Could this ghost baby be the baby that had died in this house? We never saw it again. I wonder if it only shows itself to toddlers. Story 2. My imaginary friend. When I was 5, I developed an imaginary friend. I called him David. The only problem was he was really mean. And when I say mean, I mean just that. He would push me down the stairs. I would end up with handprints on my body. And they were always little handprints. Everything would happen when we were upstairs playing in the bedroom on the west side of our house. My mom thought I was hurting myself for attention. And I kept telling her it was David. And she would say, "Well, tell him to go away and leave you alone." I would always respond with, "I can't. He hurts me even more when I say that." She was working one night, and the nurse she was working with lives a couple miles down the road from us. Her family had been in the area for a long time. My mom started telling her about how I was hurting myself for attention and blaming it on my imaginary friend David. She thought she was going to have to take me to a child psychologist to see what was going on. And the other nurse said, "Oh, Joan, don't you know there was a little boy out in that area that died of pneumonia when he was around 5 or 6? I bet your son's seeing the ghost of that little boy." My mom believes in everything supernatural, but she just brushed it off and didn't think it could be a ghost. I eventually outgrew my imaginary friend, and I don't really have any memory about when he left. I had honestly forgotten about him until I did some research for my senior project for English class. A group of friends and I went around to several haunted places in Indiana and did a report on them. There's an old cemetery across the creek from my parents' house. Just driving past one night, on our way home from another haunted place, one of my friends wanted to take a stop, take some pictures, and see if we could catch anything. I walked into the cemetery and was drawn to this one headstone, and for some reason, I didn't stop walking until I got to that headstone. It was several rows back into the cemetery, and I looked down and showed my flashlight. I could make out the name. It's David. From the dates of the headstone, I could see that this person was 6 years old when he died. As soon as I saw the name, I thought about my imaginary friend. I couldn't believe it. I had to get out of there. I went and sat in the car the whole time everyone else took pictures. There's something in that bedroom at my parents' house. I had to move downstairs to another bedroom when I was my sophomore year of high school. I just couldn't sleep in that room. I would just sit up in bed and look around because it sounded like there was someone playing on the floor. My little brother is in that room now. He's 5. There's a big age gap between us. He won't stay in that room by himself. He won't play in it. Nothing. If one of our parents are upstairs and in their room, he's okay. But he will not go upstairs alone. The other day, my mom and him were cleaning his room. My mom decided to take a break and have a cup of coffee. She told my little brother she'd be right back. He told her he didn't want to go and that he'd come downstairs and play. My mom asked him why he couldn't stay in his room by himself. She asked him why he was scared of his room. And he said it's because he sees the ghost of a little boy that comes in and plays with his toys. So far, my brother hasn't mentioned any names, and my mom isn't going to bring up the name David unless my brother does first. But we're all really curious about whether this ghost is David or not. Story 3. The phone call. I've never actually saw a ghost that I know of, but I've had a couple things happen that I think were supernatural experiences. One afternoon in December, me and one of my kids went to see my mother, who lives close by. My wife told me to call as soon as we got there. There was some snow and ice around that time. Anyway, I didn't call when I got there. But after about an hour, I decided I needed to call home. Me and my son were in the kitchen. My mom had went to another room. I picked up the phone, and I could hear talk on the receiver. I figured my mom was on the other line. As I started to hang up, I distinctively heard my wife's voice say, "I told him to call as soon as he got there." I thought her and my mom must be talking, so I hung up. When my mom came back into the kitchen and didn't have the cordless phone with her, I was surprised. Also, there's apparently no other line in the house. I picked up the phone then, and I called home. I immediately asked my wife if she had tried to call. She hadn't. She was still waiting for me to call. Sometimes people pick up the phone before it rings and might be talking to someone in the house while not realizing that someone is already on the other end, or vice versa. I asked her had she told my daughter or anyone else that I was supposed to call. She had not. So how did I hear her voice so clearly? There was no one else in my mom's house but me, my son, and my mom. There was no party phone line on this phone. Is this some sort of form of doppelganger experience? I just don't understand what happened. The next couple stories are haunted doll stories. I personally love haunted doll stories because just behind me in the studio is a collection of creepy dolls. I don't believe any of them are haunted, but I like them. Story 4. Ghost dolls. When I was about 8 or 9, I had this wooden doll with string hair. It was the ugliest thing ever. It would sit on top of my curtains for the longest time. At my old house, that doll would sit on my curtains, and every time I woke up, that doll would not be on my curtains. It'd be sitting right next to me, in the bed. This happened for the longest time. Then I moved upstairs to my new room, and I put that doll up on my curtains like always. But, of course, it still always ended up next to me, sometime in the middle of the night. One night I slept downstairs, and I put the doll on the table in the living room, next to this clown doll that was wooden just like her. When I woke up, she was next to me. Not on the table, but right next to me. When I went to the table, that poor clown doll was face down on the ground. My parents swore that they didn't touch the dolls. My brother, he swore too. I guess the doll must have pushed the clown doll down and then went to me. My dad got sick of me complaining that the doll was always moving, so he burned the dolls in our fireplace. After that, I was fine until I started going to my sister's house to spend the night with my niece. My niece was 2 years younger than me, and she had 2 porcelain dolls that used to be my mom's when she was a little girl. My niece kept them on her dresser. I was always so scared sick of these dolls. They had those glass eyes that would open and close when you held them. They never moved or anything. They just scared me. One night I was in my niece's room, trying to go to sleep, and I kept staring at these dolls. I got so frightened that I put a blanket over their heads, and then I begged my sister to take me back home. It was 3 a.m, but I called my mom to go back home. She wasn't happy. I mean, who would be happy about going out at 3 a.m? I've since moved to another state, far away from my sister, and no more haunted dolls, no more haunted houses, and I'm happy for that. Story 5. The Haunted Doll. I was looking around at the tables at a yard sale, and I saw this very pretty doll with curly auburn hair. I asked the woman how much the doll was, and she said, "Oh, yeah, you can have her for free." I was thinking to myself, why would she want to give this doll away for free? And then she continued to say that the doll's name was Kara, and that I need to take very good care of her. She gave me her number if I had any questions about the doll. When we got home, stuff started happening. Lights started flickering, and I started hearing a little girl's voice. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I started seeing a little girl with brown hair and a blue dress darting around corners and running around. I called the woman, and she gave me the information on the doll. She said, Kara is a haunted doll. A spirit is inside of her. She said a woman named Sally had owned the doll, but it gave it away because it was freaking her out. Apparently, weird things and sometimes tragic things follow this doll wherever the doll ends up. Nothing horrible has happened yet. We just hear the little girl and sometimes see her darting around, and we can live with that. If I don't pay attention to her, she gets mad. But other than that, she's more of a neutral spirit in our house, and we can live with that. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Bye!